the United Nations, especially at a time when this important report is being formulated. I must say that, although what is in this report is being witnessed day in and day out by the people who are on the ground, the pain, the agony, the sacrifices, the violations which are listed in this report are a daily routine as far as people living in Kashmir is concerned. As I represent a group which is the All Parties Youth Conference, which is an amalgam of political and religious parties, all those groups who believe that justice has to be done with the people of Kashmir, the commitments which have been made by the leadership of India and Pakistan has to be fulfilled. We certainly believe that one of the most important issues which is being overlooked by the international community is the issue of human rights. And I must say that although the UN groups and the rapporteurs have taken notice of what's happening on the ground, but it is a question of India's response in the coming 4 years as far as the recommendations are concerned. That are they really going to seriously address those concerns which we feel are most genuine as far as people are concerned? If you look at the contents as Frank was discussing, the main issue which we feel is definitely the political problem in Jammu and Kashmir. And obviously the denial of political rights leads to the denial of human rights. And because we have a situation where we have more than 700,000 troops in Kashmir, which definitely qualifies Kashmir as one of the most heavily militarized places in the entire world. So obviously they are there with a design, and that design is to suppress the genuine voice and aspirations of the people on the ground. And in that context, we are seeing violations of basic human rights day in and day out. Although there have been many commitments by the Indian state, time and again, in terms of dealing with human rights violations, and we have many institutions in India as well as in Kashmir who claim to be working for human rights, namely the State Human Rights Commission and the Commission for Human Rights of India, the National Human Rights Commission as it is called. But the fact remains that these commissions are itself organizations which have no power to deal with a situation like we have in Kashmir. The State Human Rights Commission is on record of having accepted the fact that in Kashmir there are more than 8,000 people who have disappeared in the last 20 years. They have accepted the fact that there are disappearances and there are mass graves which have been found in Kashmir. But as you might be knowing, that recently the state government has clearly and categorically rejected any probe into the issue of mass graves. They have blatantly said no, that we have not the capacity and the competence to deal with cases of disappearances or cases where we feel, because the issue of disappearances and the issue of mass graves is very closely linked. Because majority of the people, we believe that the people who are buried in these mass graves are those people who have been picked up by the army, by the police, by the paramilitary forces, subjected to torture and buried in and across the state of Jammu and Kashmir. So the Hurriyat Conference, as such, as a political organization, we believe that unless and until the human rights situation is improved on the ground, India's commitment to human rights, unfortunately till date, has not been that complete. And we want to see the fact that the recommendations which are there in this report clearly talk about what are the main problems or areas of problem which India has to address. and one is definitely the issue of the Armed Forces Special Powers Act. As we have hundreds and thousands of troops present on the ground, and these troops cannot be prosecuted if found guilty of killings or violations by the courts, as they enjoy impunity on the ground. And this is the biggest human rights violation which is happening at present in the state of Jammu and Kashmir. We have dozens of incidents where it's been proved that that Battalion A, Battalion B, or Battalion C, or Officer A, B, or C is responsible for the killing of an innocent man, or fake encounters have taken place in Kashmir, but there is no legal way to prosecute those people. So I think the biggest challenge for us is that the Armed Forces Special Powers Act of 1990, which is one of the, I would say the blackest laws in the history of, as far as black law is concerned, that has to change. And the Hurriyat Conference, right from day one, in fact, when we had our last meeting with the Prime Minister of India in 2006, 2007, we presented a list of our suggestions to the Government of India where we felt that these CBMs or confidence building measures are taken up by the Government of India, definitely a situation can be obtained on the ground where we can talk in terms of political settlement. But unfortunately, India talks about peace. India talks about addressing the problems politically, but they approach the issue militarily. Their behavior is military in nature. When you have a situation where human rights violations are taking place of the worst kind, how can any peace process or dialogue intend to take us forward? Although the Hurriyat is committed to a dialogue process with India, with Pakistan, recently, as you might be knowing, the Indian Foreign Minister was traveling to Pakistan, and they have once again reiterated the need to address bilateral issues. But the fact remains that unless and until we see an improvement on the ground in Kashmir, it makes absolutely no sense for India and Pakistan to talk trade, to talk culture, to talk any other issue except the fact that there had to be priority to that issue where humans' lives are being lost day in and day out. Another important issue which has been mentioned in this recommendation is definitely the Public Safety Act, under which any person, and if the state even has no reason or they don't have any proof, he can be detained for a period of 2 years without trial, just on the basis of the fact that if they feel that he is a threat to the state security, he can be booked for 2 years. And this Public Safety Act is being used as a weapon of war against the people of Kashmir, against the political leadership of Kashmir. Dozens of my colleagues have been arrested, and many of them are still in jails fighting legally this act. And the sad part is that even if the courts find them not guilty, and they are given a clean sheet by the courts, the moment they step out of the court, they are arrested, re-arrested, and booked in some other case, and then we have to follow the same method again and again. We have to go around the circle. So unless and until the issues like Armed Forces Special Powers Act, the Public Safety Act, and then of course we have the POTA, the Prevention of Terrorism Act, we have the National Security Act. So these acts are definitely intended there to keep the army and the paramilitary forces in a position of strength, that they can go on killing people with impunity without the fear of being prosecuted, without the fear of being asked. So when the state is involved in issues where there is absolutely no concern, no accountability, how do we intend to move forward? So we believe that, as far as the report is concerned, that unless and until these recommendations are implemented on the ground, And I don't honestly see that happening unless and until we see the Indian troops moving out of Kashmir. We see accountability on the ground. We see a working government which is concerned about the well-being of its people. What we have seen over the years is that the government of India is desperately trying to give an impression to the world who are looking at Kashmir that everything is democratic, everything is legal, and the only problem India is facing is extremism and terrorism across the border. We believe that the main issue is definitely the issue of aspirations, issue of people's will. And I think the last 2 years are enough for us to say that what has been happening across the globe, especially in the Islamic world, is a clear indication that people who are determined to fight for their rights, they cannot be suppressed. Their voices of genuine voices of expression cannot be subdued by force or by oppression. So we believe that India has to show eagerness. They have to accept the fact, as they have rightly, in a sense that for the first time, probably I would say, they've accepted that yes, there are problems in Kashmir, and they have, obviously, they have 4 years now to deal with those problems. But the bigger issue is that the scope for opposition in Kashmir is shrinking day by day. As a religious leader, I am not allowed to go to my mosque to offer Friday prayers because there is fear among the Indian authorities that people will assemble in the mosques and they will come out in large processions and demand justice. Even on the auspicious day of Eid, after the holy month of Ramadan, where I was supposed to give my sermon, my yearly sermon at the Eid congregation, for no reason I was detained in my house and not allowed to proceed to the Eidgah or the area where I gave my sermon for the Eid day. Just because of fear that the people would assemble and people would talk and they would listen to voices, obviously those voices which represent their aspirations. So I think unless and until there is a realization within the Indian government and the Indian system that Kashmir issue has to be dealt primarily on a political basis. It is not an administrative problem where a government will come or a government will go. It's not an issue of healthcare or better roads or job opportunities. Definitely these are issues which are on a day-to-day basis we are facing. But the bigger issue is the issue of aspiration, the issue of freedom, the issue of political future of the people of Jammu and Kashmir. And I, in all honesty, must say that the people of Kashmir, especially the youth, who are once again giving peace a chance. 2008, 2009, 2010, we saw the people's movement in Kashmir gathering momentum. And it was a peaceful movement, completely peaceful, no violence, no militancy. But the response of the state of India was brutal. We lost hundreds of young men to the bullets of India, to the bullets of the world's largest democracy, for no reason that they would come on the streets asking for their birthright, the right which has been accepted by this body, by the United Nations, by the world community. But unfortunately, they are completely overlooking those facts. So I must say, to sum it up, that as far as the human rights situation is concerned, definitely we have most difficult situations on the ground. And it is, I think, for the NGOs, for the UN, for the champions of human rights causes to come together and raise their concern with the government of India that they should try to stop violations of human rights. There should be mechanisms in process. There should be a genuine desire by the Indian government to put those people behind bars who are found guilty of violations of human rights. And I must say that unless and until we see demilitarization on the ground, we see some respite to the common man on the streets of Kashmir, violations will continue to happen. And I think over the last 20 years, we have seen a situation where people's political rights, human rights, civil rights, religious rights are being violated day in and day out. And at the end, I must say that as far as the Hurriyat Conference is concerned, Hurriyat Conference has always been committed to a peaceful resolution of the Kashmir problem. We believe that, yes, we have to engage with India, we have to engage with Pakistan, we have to move forward and try to find a solution to the Kashmir problem. But as you say, that you can't clap with one hand unless and until there is an eagerness on the Indian side to come forward. And the first thing we expect from the Indian state is an acknowledgement, at least, of the sentiment on the ground. One feels very concerned and very hurt that the only way the government of India tries to weigh the Kashmir issue is through the barrel of the gun or through economic incentives. That every 3 years, 4 years, we see the Indian Prime Minister, the Indian ministers coming and offering economic packages in Kashmir, offering jobs, incentives, as if Kashmiri resistance struggle or Kashmiri blood is on sale, that India can buy it out for a given amount of money. I must say that unless and until there is realization and acceptance by the government of India to come forward, to move forward with seriousness and sincerity, address the issues, be a responsible state and accept their mistakes, which they're doing on the ground, we cannot move forward. So we feel that we're hopeful that the recommendations which are there, these 161 recommendations, would definitely be taken up by the government of India so that they can create an atmosphere which is free of fear and coercion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mirwaiz, Umar, Farooq. You know, Mirwaiz means who gives the sermon. Now you understand why. Thank you. The Armed Forces Special Powers Act, which you quoted, was described by the Human Rights Report from last year by the US Foreign Affairs, by the US State Department. It gives security forces immunity from prosecution for acts committed under this law. It means it's one of the very few places in the world where you have immunity for acts committed by military and militia. I've been in Srinagar, I've seen you in Srinagar, and those who intend to visit Srinagar do it. It's looking like Switzerland. People dress differently. The trees, the mountains, the lakes, exactly like Switzerland. I think you feel here a little bit at home. But then I was brought by friends to building. They said, oh, here's the interrogation center. If it's evening and you are very quiet, you can hear the cries of the people who are tortured there. And everyone knows when someone of your family is arrested, and the next day you get the information, or after 2 days you can visit this person, you always come with plaster and things like this, because you know